All of us are back from our summer vacations. We talk about the cars that we drove, both in the United States and overseas, plus the Toyota CHR. Is it an SUV or a hatchback? And finally, we get some viewer questions, one of which got us out on the test track to find out the answer. Next on Talking Cars. Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Cars. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Jake Fisher.
I'm Gabe Schenhauer.
And we're at the end of the summer, rolling into fall. You can see I'm starting my little fall beard for warmth here because I don't have as much up top. But, you know, at the end of the summer, everyone goes away. And I know from talking around the office, Jake, you took the biggest trip probably of all of us. Tell us about it.
Well, I shaved my beard already, so the vacation beard's done. But yeah, we went to China and Japan. So we kind of took a 3-weeker and spent a lot of time kind of, I'm always looking at the cars too, wherever I go.
Sure.
And when we went to Japan, we landed in Tokyo, and I did exactly what everyone says not to do, which is rent a car in Tokyo, because they got a great public transportation system.
And there's like everyone's
trains
on the road. You see those like traffic lights change, and like it's a mass of people. You know, like how do you drive?
People. And it was a blast. I wouldn't recommend to a lot of people to go and rent a car in Tokyo, but
you're an expert.
I'm whatever, but after the third day, I figured out which side of the road to stay on, which was helpful. But yeah, we wound up renting a car in Tokyo and drove clear across the country to Kyoto and Nara and all that good stuff. But driving in Japan, I mean, it was really cool, right? It was really quite a challenge. But it's amazing if you look at the auto industry and how it's evolved completely different in Japan than in America. I mean, in America, you see tons of Japanese cars, but these aren't the Japanese cars you see in Japan.
So they Americanized cars here and
Mini cars and...
Well, I mean, look, the cars we have over here, right? I mean, Camry, Accord, I mean, they're all built in America, right? I mean, these are American cars.
And they're big.
And they're big. But, first of all, you got the little tiny cars there, right? You got the 600cc, like little cars. And these are, they're not like smart cars. They're 4-door, like little cube boxes, right? We were with the Scion XB. That was here. That's huge compared to what everyone's driving over there. Very small, very efficient. There's reasons why they do it. They get tax incentives and all these things.
Yeah, what size the engines and such?
I think they're like 600cc, and they have to be like a maximum of like 63
there's a tax
horsepower.
limit or something.
Yeah, but I mean, in a country where Accord might be $35,000, these are $10,000 cars, right. And they're great driving around little streets. But that's those I've heard of. What I didn't realize was just how. Look, we get minivans here, and we always talk about minivans, and they're not cool, but they're really useful vehicles. They get minivans of every size.
So even U.S. size, like the Sienna.
Sure, you'll see a Sienna, you'll see an Odyssey,
yep.
But then you have like these, kind of civic footprint minivans. You got smaller minivans, and they're all these cubes with tons of room inside.
So they're efficient. They're not just tiny little cars.
Right, exactly. So almost like everything from a little tiny box to the big minivans and bigger than that. And this is what really most people are driving now.
So narrow, tall boxes.
Right, with tons of room inside. And it's just so efficient. And then you get back to America, and it's like everyone's driving a pickup truck, which is like so inefficient.
Well, everyone's going to say, though, Gabe, correct me, well, there's tiny little things and tiny little engines. You can't put stuff in them, and you can't get out of your own way. What about that? How did the rental car work? How did that go with a family of 4 and your stuff?
Well, I mean, it was fine. I drove a Toyota Ractis, which was like, you go to the rental counter, right? And they're like, oh, you have a Chrysler 200, and you're always trying to upgrade, get out of it. They're like, you have a Toyota Ractis. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, should I get out of it? Is it good? I looked at the picture. It kind of looks like a Toyota Yaris, but it's kind of a larger Yaris. And actually it was fine. There's plenty of room in it. It's kind of like a little, halfway between like a little minivan or something like that. And it was fine.
So Gabe, what about your trip? How far did you go? And then what about some of the cars over?
Well, first I went to Ohio, bringing my son back to school. So we took the Volkswagen Atlas, which turned out to be a wonderful road trip car.
Well, speaking of a giant box, like versus the little Japanese, it's an immense box, isn't it?
So 9-hour drive, 600 miles something, and good seat, good infotainment system, tons of room. My son jumped kit and a guitar and his Xbox and just about it was like a move, and a nice 450-mile range on the gas tank. So a wonderful car. I mean, for a road trip, can't beat that. So that's one trip.
Yep.
I also took another trip to Israel, and
Not in the Atlas.
not on the Atlas. Yeah.
Okay.
Just covered about half the Atlas. So anyway, unlike other times when I rent cars, staying a few days in Tel Aviv, was no point renting a car because traffic and parking is such a nightmare. So I just use taxis, and nothing wrong with using Mercedes C-Class all the time. Going from one place to another, saving the hassle of parking and.
So they went from
and
E's
all.
before. Like historically, they were E's, and now the C is big enough for taxi use.
Yeah, C-Class is big enough for a taxi.
Slumming it a bit.
Yeah.
More often than, they're not all C-Classes, but more often than not, you get a C-Class.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a Skoda or some other Renault or such.
A comparable size.
I also I borrowed my sister's Hyundai Tucson once, and I parked it in a parking garage. And at the end, after a few hours, I come back to find it, and lo and behold, I don't know which car it is because apparently like every fourth car there is a Hyundai Tucson.
Front-wheel
And
drive or all-wheel drive?
Front-wheel drive,
Front-wheel
mostly,
drive? Okay.
yeah. And I didn't remember the license plate. I didn't really remember what color it was. So I'm like walking with the key.
The beep in the air?
Yeah, beep in the area. Also, a lot of times people ask me, are there any American cars there? So just not counting Ford of Europe products like Focus and Fiesta and Chevrolets that are sourced from South Korea. Real American cars, Jeep Grand Cherokee seems like to be the most popular American car there.
Really?
Yeah.
So just super capable off-road.
Yeah, it's not really about the off-road, even though people do that
Sure.
there. But it's just seems like it's considered like a cool car,
I was shocked how many Subarus were in Israel when I visited a number of years ago now, 8 years ago. I just didn't think like, all-wheel drive only car is necessary, but yeah, a ton of Subarus.
Yeah, tons of Subarus, the Koreans really, Hyundai and Kia are like, just like pretty much took over a large section of the market. Also, I was surprised how the Toyota CHR, you hardly see a CHR here. I saw like tons of them there. Yeah, most of them hybrids, but
Yeah. We saw a bunch of CHRs in Japan too, and they were all hybrids. Unfortunately, we don't get those yet.
Well,
here.
kind of rolls into what we're testing, because we have a CHR in test. And again,
just finished testing.
just finished it. It's front-wheel drive only in the United States, whereas overseas, you can get it all-wheel drive and hybrid.
And hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like a fashion statement. You see it parked like outside every like hip restaurant and bar, and it's like a young kind of hip kind of car.
It's definitely polarizing.
Nobody really cares that the visibility is awful. That it's
Compromised with kids in the back or something like that.
right. It looks like a coupe, so it's high riding, so it's kind of fashionable.
When we first got our CHR, we posted pictures of it on our Facebook page, and because we Reports Cars Facebook page, and I was surprised how many people were posting. Is like, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Well, sure, but it's hitting a target demographic. Apparently, like you said, it's a stylish, fashionista, if you will, looking kind of car.
You wear the man bun because it ticks off other people. It's like,
You drive the CHR because it annoys other people. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's. I was surprised actually how big it is inside for what it is. It's still a tiny car, and it's still the polarizing styling, and still baffling about it not having all-wheel drive in the United States. I understand it's going to be heavier and all that, but still, it just doesn't seem to fit.
Well, we were just talking about it earlier today. We were talking about, where do we put in the ratings, right? Because it's like kind of like a small subcompact SUV, but you know what? Our definition of a subcompact SUV is an all-wheel drive, thing, and you can't even get it on that.
Yeah,
so now is it
people-
really more like a Kia Soul, which is just a small
potential
car.
buyers are going to perceive it as a competitor to a Honda HR-V and a Mazda CX-3 and then Subaru Crosstrek.
Right.
But I think knowing that it doesn't have all-wheel drive should take it out of contention for a lot of people, especially in the snow belt.
Right. As far as all-wheel drive capability, without having that, it's going to be like the bottom of the smile, the southern tier states, where you'd buy a front-wheel drive HRV or, one of the front-wheel drive CX-3, Mazda CX-3.
Yeah, and a lot of these small SUVs are sold as front-wheel drive only. I mean, more than about 55% of them. Yeah. So, I mean, California, Texas, Florida, I mean, even bigger SUVs are sold as front-wheel drive.
Sure. Well, we'll have ratings on that later. The trip I took was up to Boston and to Portland, and I used the Chrysler Pacifica hybrid minivan. And I got to tell you, it's a fantastic vehicle. I was very impressed. I got 28 miles per gallon or so on the trip. It indicated, I didn't fuel meter it. I didn't measure it out exactly, but that's what it said. So it was pretty good. 4 people, all our stuff.
Were you able to plug in anywhere?
So I wasn't able to plug in because where we were parking, it was in hotels. And I wasn't dragging it out into Boston where there would be some plentiful charging. And then the couple places we went in Portland, some breweries, because that's become my thing after Dave Abrams has introduced me to the world of craft beer.
And your kids are old enough.
To at least hang out at the brewery. They're old enough for that. And then a couple other places, they just didn't have charging stations, which is a disappointment. But it was great. It was a great vehicle. But we were talking about the entertainment factor. I mean, ours has the screens in the second row, individual screens for the kids, and they have games on it. And they also have, the video screen where you can pop a CD in the front. The kids have headphones. I liked it a lot. But you had a point where you were saying, why not just get an iPad?
Just get an iPad. And it's like, look, I mean, the Pacifica, it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of features on it. There's a lot of it's almost like being in a plane, right? I mean, you got like all these different options. You can see
there's games and all kinds of stuff.
You can see where you are on your trip. And the Honda Odyssey has very similar features too. I mean, it's very, very cool.
I like the license plate game.
License plate game, right?
I couldn't get my kids to do that, yeah.
Get the kids some iPads, or not even the iPads. Like there's cheaper alternatives too. To
some basic
a
tablets that you could just put some videos on.
And now you got videos, you got games. They're upgradable. I mean, the stuff that's on these minivans is great. But you know what? In 5 years, I mean,
it becomes old tech.
Oh my God! I mean, what's going to be around in 5 years when it comes to that technology? So, and plus, you're not reaching for it. It's like right there for
So that was probably it was great to have them in their own universe. I could take the DVD out and just be like, no, you're done. Let's interact. Right. Look out the window. Do what I did when I was little. Stare out the window and be bored, for God's sakes. But on the other hand, it was very nice to put the video in. They were there. They can control it themselves. The iPad you could pass back and forth. They did run into a lot of trouble at times. Like, well, it's not working here. Oh, wait, it's paused. And then my daughter, of course, so she's got the headphones on, and my son's got the headphones on, and they're like screaming at each other because it's already loud, telling him what to do. And I'm driving, like, well, help us. And, we're not going to climb into the back doing that. So, yeah, the iPad you pass back and forth. Also, the one thing I found was that, my kids are 7.5 and 5.5. So to access the screen on the back of the seat, they have to pull up a little bit, which then makes it difficult to reach for them as little kids to reach back and buckle themselves in. They can buckle themselves in. They're capable of that. But the reach was so hard that then we had to, if they became unbuckled or even getting them in and out, it was just an extra step. So it's just one of those things where if they sat further back, they were able to buckle themselves and then have an iPad. We don't have them for the kids.
There's a bunch of issues there. I mean, like I did a trip to Nova Scotia, actually, based on your recommendation about 10 years ago. And I took a minivan. And again, minivan, great, you know. But I had a 3-year-old kid at the time. And now you're dealing with DVDs, and you're like, they're too little to put the DVD in themselves. But then you're futzing with the DVD when you're trying to drive the car. It's like, it's done, you know.
The headphones on little kids don't always fit.
So it's just like, and again, it's like the upgradability. It's like the 10-year-old system that was in that Sienna that I drove, it's nothing compared to what's the technology. I mean, was there even iPads around, 10 years ago? Not so much.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd love to hear, in the comments what people do for their road trips, So, tell us what types of things you guys do, to keep the kids occupied. I mean, maybe it's just, if I have to stop this car,
I'll tell you what I've been doing is that audiobooks, that get us all involved, and it was really fun.
What about the older teenager? Did you guys sit in silence and he was on his phone the whole time?
No, actually, we did the old-fashioned way. We made up games, interactive games, without any electronics.
Yeah. Wow.
But
old school.
I was old school, and that was years ago because my kids are in college. But anyway, as an aside, I'll say the Pacifica Hybrid, I think actually that is FCA's best car right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
It's a really nice car.
It's about the only thing is the weird beeping when you raise and lower the tailgate. It's just an odd beep. But aside from that, and it's always hard to find that button. It's so conventional. across the industry to have it up top on the door. So reaching for that, I always miss it. Aside from that, it's great. And the seats, the second row seats are great in the hybrid because they're more padded, a little more plush. Hard to get
stow and go. So
right, no stow and go. They don't fold
not
on the floor.
compromised.
Not so thin. Hard to get booster seats to sit to position. The kids are always a little off center because they're very bolstered, but they're super comfortable.
But it's like, again, it's like we've talked about this a long time. It's like minivan and hybrid. I mean, again, you get hybrid. It's very practical and fuel efficient and whatever. I mean, Prius is the transportation pod. You don't get it because it's really fun to drive. You get it because it does the job. And same thing with minivan. Minivans are sensible. It's like it's all the stars align for sensibility. But it's nothing, going back to Japan. I mean, I was in Tokyo about 11 years ago, and guess what they had there? Hybrid minivans all the way back then. Toyota had a smaller minivan, but a hybrid. And, it's just like, finally we're getting the stuff.
Right. When it works perfectly for mom-mobile or even stay-at-home dad-mobile for driving around town. If you're shuttling around town, you could be on the electric power almost all day. You get about 30 miles, and that's great. Here and there, shuttle back and forth, school activities. So yeah, you really get a lot of benefit.
It's impressive how much battery. I mean, it's funny that they market it as the hybrid minivan. It's a plug-in with a lot of capacity. I mean, 30 miles on the plug-in portion is not chump change, and that's pretty impressive.
Pretty healthy.
Well, speaking of little boxes and minivans, I mean, there was other news, which is the Volkswagen Microbus is finally returning after how many years of
which
auto
version?
shows?
Which version are we on now?
Right? I mean, it's been years that they've been showing concepts of this, and everyone's like, "Yes, bring back the Microbus," because the old Microbuses are worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars now.
Yeah, and they're all over Portland, Maine. I'll tell you.
They have the monopoly on them.
They do.
But I mean, that's really interesting. Where it's electric. I mean, again, practicality. It's a small box, which is the hot size in Japan, but we really haven't seen that here. And they've got the opportunity to kind of make it cool. I mean, it's still a couple years away, but I'm pretty excited, that we will buy one and we will go and test this. And they've got the opportunity to actually have a lot of battery, in that platform.
Yeah, sort of like the flat floor skateboard thing that GM had years ago with their hydrogen things.
Similar idea. Yeah. Everything in Volkswagen is going to be electric now because the diesel's dead.
Right, Dieselgate. A lot of money they have to put into electrification. For California, for the rest of the country, but that's where their fleet's going, right?
We'll have to figure out which category to put the Microbus in.
If it's all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive.
I don't know.
But, talking about some testing, the Microbus brings us into a couple questions that we got. The first, one of our viewers says, again, I hear you all mention stopping distances, but why don't you your review videos ever mention numbers for horsepower, torque, braking distance, 0 to 60 times, etc., because that's the important information. Well, it's real simple to really answer that. It's why this podcast isn't brought to you by a food company and a manufacturer and, 6 other, commercials for other shows. It's because we have a paywall system. So we do put out a lot of information on Talking Cars. We put out information on consumerreports.org and for free. But a lot of our testing data is behind the paywall because that's how we generate revenue.
And we do have videos that do have information like 0 to 60 and braking distance, all that stuff, but it's behind the paywall.
Exactly.
So we have 2 versions of, and I guess that's not always as clear as it should be, but a lot of the videos that you're looking at on YouTube or whatnot, those aren't our test videos. We have much more comprehensive videos for paying subscribers.
And on consumerreports.org, you can sort and compare vehicles across that realm. So you're going to see how they all each perform against each other in those.
And honestly, probably the biggest thing is reliability. And you'll notice if you look at the videos, we don't necessarily tell you how reliable it is, and that's such an important thing. So that's all
so there's a ton of premium content that's available for subscribers. So the second question actually, got us actually putting on our thinking caps and not just talking about it. Person asked, wondering if you could put this question in the next Talking Cars episode. Is it more fuel efficient to put an automatic car into neutral at long red lights? I figure that holding back the crawl is wasting energy, i.e. gas, and there are also fewer vibrations in neutral as well. Or will going back and forth in the transmission cause damage? So Gabe, would it hurt the vehicle to do that?
So there is conventional wisdom that every neutral to drive is going to take some away from the life of the transmission. I don't know. According to experts, transmission experts at manufacturers.
Okay.
There is no, shouldn't be any concern about wear and tear.
Actually, would it do any saving? Would it give you any savings? You know, is it like stop-start technology, or is it just like, you know, you're wasting a lot of time?
Well, I mean, so we kind of huddled about this, and we didn't know. I really don't. And I understand what he's asking, right? I mean, when you're stopped, you know, you hear kind of like, you know, and all of a sudden you put it in neutral or you put it in park, and all of a sudden
engine revs drop a little
sometimes
bit.
the engine revs change a little bit, but it almost sounds like more relaxed, and you get rid of the vibration. I didn't know. My guess was it wouldn't make any difference, but we decided to test it. So we have the equipment to actually measure how many cc's of fuel that the cars are being using every minute or a time. So we decided to try it out. So we actually took our Volkswagen Tiguan, which we were testing at the time. We had it outfitted with a fuel rig.
Right,
So
it's something we do with our all test cars.
Exactly. We do our fuel economy test. So we splice it to the fuel line, and we actually measure the flow rate of fuel. And it's just an easy enough test to do. So I put the car into drive, foot on the brake. Actually, I had to shut off the automatic engine shut off.
Stop start
because
Yep.
it was so I disabled that. Also turned off the air conditioning. So just to make it consistent.
Sure.
Because air conditioning will go on. And I ran it for a minute in drive, popped it into neutral, ran it for a minute, and there was a marked change.
How marked?
So it was, the numbers were, it was 18.6 or around my 18 and a half cc's of fuel that we used in a minute when it was in drive. That dropped down to 13.
So what does that put into like dollars and cents terms?
Well, in dollars a cents, I mean, you know, in a minute you're saving about half a penny.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that's roughly the numbers, but it is a difference. So,
Sure.
I mean, you know, it's a good
Use
question.
it as you wish. You know,
Use
yeah.
it as you wish. I mean, whether or not it's worth it. I mean, obviously, a lot of new cars have start stop. That'll, you know, instead of cutting down the fuel use 30%, it'll cut it down a lot more than
That'll
that.
save you a lot more.
Right.
And honestly, it was a really good question. I mean, we love getting questions like this because sometimes there's questions that we could answer.
Right.
And there isn't a whole lot of people that have fuel rigs on vehicles where we could actually get to the answer of these things.
Well, certainly, you know,
So
and
we
it's-
could do a test like this.
And it's also not a vehicle that's prepped by anybody. Like, you know, we have that technology, like you said, and we have a safe place to do it. And just
Yeah, I mean,
try.
look, I mean, a lot of cars have the fuel economy, you know,
Gauge
the gauge, or you could reset it. You couldn't figure that out there. So that was fun.
On that note, this wraps it up for this episode of Talking Cars. If you want more information on anything that we've talked about, check out the show notes below. Thanks, and see you next time.